Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Trades Talk. I'm excited to have a guest in here where we're going to be talking about marketing. We're going to be talking about branding. We're going to be talking about stories. It's something that I think is going to help all of us grow our businesses. So lock in. The next 45 minutes is going to be amazing. We've got Diego Lopez with us in the studio. Diego, good morning. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you today? How are you today?
I'm good, man. I am super good. I'm excited to dive in here. Marketing, branding, all things growth is my favorite bucket of business to focus in. So anytime I get a focus on one of those areas, specifically for the trades and for landscape companies, I'm excited to do so. Diego, I'd love to start with just a little background. How did you get into marketing? And how'd you find this passion for it that you have today?
Yeah, that's a good question, and thank you for asking that. So my passion for marketing and branding began when I was little. I was probably, I would say around between 6 and 8. It's hard for me to remember the exact timing. And I became obsessed with branding, particularly for airlines. Why airlines? I think it's because at the time they were the ones spending a lot of effort, money, and time into making sure that the entire package was, every little detail of the entire experience was looked after from a visual standpoint, from a communication standpoint, but also how they conducted themselves. So I was really just obsessed with that. Fast forward a few years to high school, and I just started getting into graphics, storytelling. I was really into English. That was one of my favorite subjects. And then I went to school for graphic design. And right after that, I did some work with an airline that was really cool. I worked for an agency that specialized in real estate marketing. But while design was really something that I loved, it was the entire storytelling that I was really curious about. So over the years, I started branching away from just the design aspect of branding and into, okay, what story are we telling through these visuals? And then what is a strategy so we can actually spread the word? So over the years, I evolved from being a graphic designer to being a strategist that now oversees branding, marketing, and the entire client experience. And that's been over 20 years almost.
That's so awesome, man. Yeah, it's amazing how the branding and marketing, everyone I think thinks about the idea of branding and digital logos or digital, appearances or in-person appearances. But I feel oftentimes we miss the storytelling aspect of a company's brand. And I think the two things that you've had, that English background and being, in school studying that, while also studying the branding side, makes for a great dual purpose there. So tell me a little bit about the airlines just quickly, because I'm super interested in that. I think airlines is a fascinating business, very slim margins. You're competing in areas where, it's hard to know what's the difference between American and Delta and United. Sometimes you just take the flight that's most convenient. Other times people choose based on they have a favorite airline. Was there a certain part of airline marketing that really stood out to you as something that the best airline companies did better than anyone else?
Yeah, so at the time, you have to remember that I was a child. So my understanding of the world was very limited. There was a lot of curiosity and a lot of feelings involved, perhaps feelings that are a little bit more pronounced than when we are adults. And what
Right.
really drew me to these airlines, particularly a couple of airlines, and now in retrospect, they're probably the best branded airlines in the world. One of them being Air France, the other one being Mexicana, which is back now, but at the time it was Mexico's premier airline. And it just came down to how the entire package made me feel. So when I traveled with my parents, I never traveled with Air France, but when I traveled with Mexicana, it was the entire experience from the moment you go into the airport, how they treat you at the counter, the experience of boarding the airplane, the airplane itself, the smell, every single detail was looked after and made me feel a certain way. And as I grew older and I realized that really is at the heart of everything, branding is what influences how people feel about your brand, because brands don't live on the internet. They don't live even in our minds. They live in our hearts. And I always thought, wow, like if I could apply whatever these guys are doing, if I can apply the same thinking and logic to a different industry to make people feel a certain way, then I can do something that is very special, not just for the company itself, but for the people experiencing that company.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. And so tell me a little bit more about that idea of the brand making you feel something versus the brand being on the internet. Because I think some people just think the brand is on the internet and the brand is just what you see. But you're saying it's more about how you feel, which I agree with. And I'd love for you to kind of tell maybe how do we harness that? How do we capture that in our clients and in our future clients' hearts, as you say? Because I think that's so important.
Yeah, for sure. So, yes, brands are forged not in our physical world necessarily, but ultimately in the hearts of the consumers. We often say in marketing that brand is not what you say your brand is, but it's what they being the outer world, the outer public, your customers feel. So, for example, if you say you're professional and that you do the best work, but you don't show up on time, you don't answer the phone, you show up dressed in rags, then people are not going to feel that confidence that comes with hiring a professional. If you say you're a luxury company and again, you show up driving a beaten up pickup truck and you yourself are wearing just like a dirty t-shirt because you're a tradesman, that does not reflect luxury. And that doesn't make people feel confident about you as someone who claims to be a luxurious company. So there's definitely a process to craft an incredible brand, an incredible experience. And the building blocks, I would say, are making sure that you know who you are. That's probably the most important thing. And it all starts with understanding, okay, what is my, as a business owner or the business leader, understanding what your purpose in life is, then clarifying what the purpose of that company is, like why does this company exist? What worlds do we want to shape through that mission? So what is your vision for impact? And then
Right.
once you have that, you start building things up from there. You need to understand, okay, who's going to be our customers and what matters to them? Because before you start getting excited about packages and, what are we going to do? You need to understand who's your audience, what matters to them, what problems do they have? Because the best companies in the world don't exist for themselves. They exist to serve other people. That's, in my opinion, the purpose of business. Businesses exist to bless others. So
Yeah.
once you have that clear understanding of who you're serving and what their needs are, then you can craft a story and you can craft offerings that cater to those needs in particular. And then
Yeah.
from then on, so you identify those needs, then you start crafting a story that puts them at the center, and we can get into that in a few minutes. Then once you have a written story, then you start expressing that through visuals, and one thing leads to the next. When coming up with a brand identity, we're never thinking about what does the owner of the company like. We're not concerned about what their likes are. We're concerned about, again, going back to that customer. Who is this customer? What matters to them? What problems is this company solving for them? And we take a very scientific approach and methodical approach to coming up with visuals for that story, telling that story visually. Once you have that, of course, you want to spread the word. So that would be your marketing. And there's there's a lot of complexity that comes to that we can unpack. But one very overlooked building block of a great brand is a client experience. And for a long time, I had this frustration with a lot of the clients that I worked with because we would definitely come up with an amazing story that was true to them, that it was compelling to their customers. We had a mission statement that was absolutely inspiring. We had great visuals, we had a great website, great marketing, but then something else was missing after that. And we realized that a lot of companies were operating silos. So you had sales, you had marketing, you had operations, you had HR, but none of them were actually working together to create one unified experience that considered in every single step of it and every single touch point, how are people feeling when they're experiencing this particular step in our process. So the last building block is creating an amazing client experience that's intentional and also an employee experience that's intentional, because we've known through, well, experience, stories, and research that if you treat your team right and then they feel like they're part of something bigger, they feel taken care of, they will in turn take care of your customers, and your business will grow that way as well.
Wow. That was a really good explanation of that process of story, client experience, marketing, which is telling that story. I would agree with you. I think a lot of us get caught up in what our own needs are and what we want the business to be like versus what our customer's perspective actually is. And I think oftentimes our perspective is jaded by maybe past experiences of dealing with customers and having those frustrations. And so we end up kind of telling the customer what they should think or feel versus listening to what the customer actually feels. And frankly, like the negative feedback, the critical feedback of our businesses is the best feedback. And that's often the feedback that we don't listen to. But when we get a 5-star Google review, we're like, yes, let's listen to that more. And so I think when you can listen to the people that are most critical to you in business, you start to build a much better client experience, and you remove friction, you remove issues from that process. I want to keep going on this. I think this is such a great topic for the listeners. Going back to crafting the story, you mentioned really crafting the story, talking to your ideal customer. What do you say to people? And I think a lot of the trades businesses are in this spot where you have a business that does both commercial and residential, or a business that does both maintenance and construction. You kind of have these two different avatars, maybe three. How do you approach a business like that has such a multi-service offering like most trades businesses do?
That's a fantastic question. It's a problem that I've helped companies solve multiple times now. And
Yeah.
the first time, it was a bit of a head scratcher for me, just because of the fear that my answer brings to a lot of people. But it's because people think, business owners are thinking when they approach us for branding, marketing, and all those services, they're thinking practically. So, okay, the website, what's the website going to look like? How are we going to speak to both? And the reality is, if you try to speak to both audiences, you're going to dilute the message, and you're going to be speaking effectively to no one, essentially.
Yeah.
So what you need to do is you need to decide who you're going to focus. First, you need to decide, okay, how is our business going to be divided? Like, what percentage of the business growth needs to come from one, and what percentage needs to come from the other? Then you need to think, okay, out of these two, how is business going to come our way? We had a client years and years ago when I worked at a different agency who faced this problem. They said, hey, we actually want to focus on commercial, and we know that the majority of our residential work will come from referrals through the commercial work. So we're not too worried about that. So in that particular case, we were like, okay, that's easy. We focus a story on our primary audience, which is commercial, and we dedicate little sections of the website to the side hustle, quote unquote, of residential, which in their case took up maybe 25% of their business book, and it came all from referrals. But then we have other clients who are either 50-50, or perhaps even commercial might be a little bit bigger, but they still need to sell a lot of residential work. And that's where it becomes tricky. So from a storytelling standpoint, we want to make sure that we figure out what those two different stories will be. We need to craft two stories with an underlying theme. And then when it comes to telling that story online, we need to figure out, okay, how is each audience going to find us? How are we going to get that business? And oftentimes we actually have to spend a lot more effort, money, and time into marketing to the residential side of the business, because the commercial side tends to come from relationships, from tenders, and not quite so much from advertising online.
I like that answer. So, and I'm in a similar spot at K&D because we do have residential, commercial, and we do have construction and maintenance. And I agree with what you're saying. You got to pick a lane and really go all in on that lane. And I think for us, there's a couple different things that we kind of go through. For one, our commercial maintenance is almost primarily all outbound work. So we are knocking doors, calling offices, getting in front of people, because very few people call our office for maintenance. I mean, it happens. It's a different world because people are already locked in with the customer. So you kind of have to go in and try to disrupt that. And for that reason, we can actually give them assets like a postcard with a QR code on it that has a landing page built for them. Like it's built for HOAs, it's built for commercial property managers. So that we don't just get a ton of flow into the website. Also, commercial maintenance, in a way, we're trying to grow it faster than everything else. But when you really think about it, we have the revenue we're doing this year, 80% of that was already captured last year and was recurring revenue. Whereas in construction, 100% of it is being replaced every single year. So you have so much more of a volume in construction versus maintenance. So I always kind of tell people, if you're between construction and maintenance and you really want to grow maintenance, sometimes you don't even realize it's not necessarily about people finding your website on maintenance. It's more about you going outbound and creating those landing pages that people can land on. But on the commercial versus residential side, we kind of fell into the same bucket where commercial is primarily relationship driven, and it is going to be mostly invitations to bid, where they're going to be getting bids from 5 contractors, and they're general contractors or developers. These guys spend less time looking at people's websites and more time looking at your references that you give them or phone numbers that you give them to call. So we figured, all right, well, maybe we don't need to make the website as focused towards them. And so we kind of landed back on this custom design build residential, which frankly, if I am talking with a customer in maintenance or commercial construction and I show them this, beautiful backyard that is just pergola, pool, outdoor kitchen, all these elevations, I go, look, guys, if we can install this stuff, I know we can put in your, 5,000 plants and a bunch of mulch. Like this is the really complex stuff we do in people's backyards. So we've kind of decided, not completely, but for the most part, we've shifted our focus in marketing and branding to design build, because that's the area in which the client is spending oftentimes their savings. They're investing on their most valuable asset, their house, and they want to make sure they do their research on your website. And so we've kind of created our branding to talk to that. So what you said we went through recently and kind of landed on that, although we're still trying to figure out how do we continue to talk to the other people in some other way, which we've done through direct mailers, or we've done through those landing pages that are specifically set up for them. When it comes to those kind of situations where you're deciding, all right, let's say we're going to go all in on design build, but we don't want to alienate the other people in terms of at least having something on the website that they can kind of find themselves in. Would you recommend having like a little drop down that kind of says, hey, commercials over here, but the bulk of the content, the homepage, the pictures, everything else is kind of focused towards that number one ideal client?
Yeah, that's how it's usually done, practically speaking. So you'll have on the homepage, you focus on your primary audience, and then you might have a call out even within the homepage itself. Within the footer, you'll definitely have a commercial link. Maybe depending on how your header is designed, you might have a link there as well. So you're making it visible, but I think people understand, like if you're a commercial prospect, you've already heard about K&D and you've heard about the company through other channels, and you go on their website, you already know that they do commercial work. So you're probably okay with searching for your section if that's how you're getting to that, if that's a journey that you're taking. But the reality is most people will not take that journey, because we often think that the
Mm,
customer journey is a linear one that, people see the ad, and ad people, like ad only people, think this way. And I think it's a big mistake. They think, okay, people will see an ad, they're going to click on it, they're going to go on the website, they're going to convert, and you, the company, are going to do the selling, and it's done. But even Google tells us that through all of their research, and we don't actually need Google to tell us this. Before Google was even a thing, we already knew that the customer journey was non-linear, and that on average, people would probably interact with your company or see your company anywhere between, I've heard, between 7 and 15 to 20 times before
yeah.
they actually reach out to you. So that was before. And now with us being all scattered brain on the internet, I would say that that journey is even more fragmented than it ever was. So for those who say, well, I don't get as much from ads, that doesn't mean that your ads are not necessarily working. It's just the nature of how people are browsing for services. They may have seen your ad, they may have seen your truck, they may have seen your mailer, and they finally went to your website through your social media because they were vetting
Yeah.
you on Instagram. So there's no single solution to telling that story. We have to understand, where are our customers spending the time? Unfortunately, in today's world, these customers are spending the time everywhere, and decide strategically, what story do we need to tell based on the mindset that they have within each one of those spaces.
Yeah, that's so well said. And I think, I kind of did that. Honestly, what you said earlier is like I started talking almost as if I was the customer immediately, like as I was telling that story about building our website and stuff. And you're right, it's not linear. It's not like people are like, okay, it's time to hire a landscaper. Let's go on the website and, oh, there's K&D. Okay, let's give them a call. Like I can relate to this in buying a car recently. I leased a new vehicle, and I mean, we probably talked about that for 6 months, me and my wife, going back and forth. I think it's the same thing for landscaping commercially, maybe different if you have a development and you're building a new, sports complex. But let's say most residential and even maintenance people, I think they talk about this opportunity or this next step in their life a long time before they actually finally make the decision to call someone. And they've probably researched it. They've probably looked around, but they didn't call anyone like for the first 5, 7, 8 times. And then there's probably another 10 or 15 times that they saw something that was an ad, that was a truck driving down the road, whether it was our brand or another brand. And they're like, man, I really need to call those landscapers. So it's not a linear journey at all. It's very sporadic, and more sporadic than ever, as you said, with social media. And I'd love to talk quickly about social media because I have noticed competition that we compete against that have been in business for 50 years. We've really kind of taken them by storm over the last 10 years as we've grown our business in our market. And we've obviously done a lot of social media for those who follow K&D. I think these companies are starting to, legacy companies are starting to use social media more and more, but some of them I think are doing a really good job, and others you see the videos and you kind of cringe a little bit and you're like, ooh, I don't know if that's helping or hurting you. You might have been better without that. What should people do? And this like whole range, right? People that are already on social, people that aren't on it, people that just get on it. What's your recommendation when it comes to doing a company social media posting, or company Instagram or LinkedIn or TikTok?
Yeah, fantastic question. I hope I know my brother is going to be listening, and I know that he already spoke to you. So I hope that there's synchronicity in this because we work together. Our view is that social media is a very important part of the entire marketing and branding flywheel that we want to create for our customers. And it's probably also the biggest opportunity, untapped opportunity for landscapers. I follow tons of landscapers. I've spent the last 10 years specializing in branding and marketing for landscapers. And there's probably just a handful of landscapers who are doing a really, really good job at using social media to tell their story and to really connect with their customers. And I think at the core of it is a lack of understanding of what social media is, not even getting into, what each platform does. There's a lack of understanding of what social media is. And perhaps there's even a lack of understanding around their customers. Because, for example, very common thing to amateur mistake that companies make is they go on social media because they feel pressured to be on social media, and then they start trying to sell you. And the reality is, I've never met someone in my whole life, and I work in the business of social media, that goes on social media to be sold. There's nobody that goes to downstairs to the basement to watch the TV just for the commercials.
Right.
They're there to be. The reality is that the people who, like, when we go on social media, we're there to escape this world. And what is it that we're looking for? We're looking to be, in some cases, educated. In some cases, we want to be entertained. In other cases, we want to be inspired. And in no case do we ever want to be sold. So again, lack of understanding of what social media is, lack of understanding of what their customers are using social media for. And then when you don't have that understanding, your content's going to suck. But if you understand what social media is, you understand how it differs from traditional media, what people are there for, and what matters to your customer, then you can really come up with a strategy and content that's actually going to make their lives better instead of just adding to the noise. So instead of adding one more commercial that nobody wants to hear, and that psychologically and neurologically your brain's just going to shut down and not even see, so wasted time and money, and also, as you said, it's harming their brand. Instead of doing that, you have an opportunity to actually form meaningful connections with your audience and contribute positively by entertaining, by educating, by inspiring. And one conversation that I've had with clients and with my brother lately is this idea of parasocial relationships. And this is a term that I learned probably 2020-ish, when podcasts were booming. And
Right.
I loved, once I knew what that term was, a light bulb went off in my head. Are you an Anthony Bourdain fan?
I've listened to some of his stuff, yeah, but not
So
not too much. Very
Anthony
limited.
Bourdain is probably, or was, he passed away, but he was probably one of those people, these celebrities that did such a good job at making you feel like you were a friend. So
Mm-hmm.
you watched him, you heard him, and in your mind, like you just felt so, like, such a deep connection for this guy. And I never understood, okay, like, am I like, am I crazy? Am I the only one? And then I started asking other people. They said, yeah, that's how I feel about him. And essentially what that is what we call a parasocial relationship. So in our minds, in our hearts, that familiarity of seeing Anthony Bourdain, coming on these trips with him, even though he's on TV, it formed a relationship that can be equated to a physical relationship, at least in our brains. And why this is relevant is because people buy from people. And a lot of business owners are actually afraid of being themselves on social media. And what we have found through the evolution of social media is that the content that performs the most is the content that actually shows people, less so the content that just shows beautiful landscapes or even, well, work in progress would be fine, but it's people that really sell.
People, yeah, okay.
And you were talking about how, residential customers might be thinking about this purchase for a long, long time. When you do a really good job at presenting your company, your story, and building connections with your audience on social media, you start creating these parasocial relationships in the minds and hearts of people. So when the time comes for them to choose a landscaper, like, let's just say hypothetically that Anthony Bourdain was a landscaper, why would I not choose him if I already have a relationship with him? So that is unspoken value of social media, the done well, that you can
Yeah.
build these parasocial relationships. Definitely, it's a strategy that's a little bit, or a tactic that's a little bit higher up on the funnel, which is totally fine, but it's going to get you leads, maybe not today, but it will get you the leads for next year, and it's going to make your sales process so much easier because you already have that relationship.
That is, I think this is one of the biggest things that has been said on Trade Stock, honestly, Diego. Like this is such a cheat code for our businesses, and what people don't understand about this, and what I'm just understanding about this as you're saying this literally, is that when you build a social media following that's extremely local, that's extremely personal, that's extremely authentic, and you build that following that is, let's say you're an owner operator, or let's say you even have a few salespeople, and the front end people of your business are inside your marketing and your social media from a I almost like to say almost from like a reality show aspect, where people follow along the journey of your company. They follow on the journey of, for example, Chantel at Candy Landscaping. She's always on the Instagram. She's always talking. She's always sharing what she's doing. She's on the job site, meeting with crews, talking about what is going on that day. And we get so much engagement from those posts. And I try to do the same thing. And what I've noticed is, from a sales perspective, when we meet with these people, they actually will reference, oh, I've been following you guys, and like, I love what you did at ABC House, or I really like that pool that you guys built over in, San Diego or wherever it is. They really connect with the journey as if they were there with you. And you can do this to a point where, like you said, when the sales rep goes out and the client sees a sales rep, it's not quite like a Joe Rogan moment where they're like, oh my God, but it kind of is. Like, they're like, hey, it's you in person. I've been watching you for a year. This is so cool. The trust factor is so much bigger. And so kind of what I'm getting to here is like, folks, it's time to put your team on your social media. People are so like, look at K&D and you'll see, I'm not saying we do a great job. We're just getting really started in I think what we're trying to do with our team, but get your sales rep, get your front end person, get your front office person that answers the phone on social media. So when people call, they go, oh, Nicole. Oh yeah, Nicole, like you're the one on the Instagram. And they start to connect the dots at such a deep level. And then on your HR, we call it employee success, our employee success side, where we hire people. We've done this, and we do get a lot of this. People I interview say, oh, I've been following you on LinkedIn for 2 years. And they're like, you say some stuff that kind of pisses people off, but like, I really like it because I agree with what you're saying. So in a way, this is like super high level. I wouldn't recommend anyone going out and doing this, but you could potentially run a strategy that we've kind of ran around employee success, where I've been very authentic with some controversial aspects of how I think about our team and how we operate as a company. And the controversy separates our potential new hires into two categories: people that are like, I'll never work for that company. I don't believe in that way of thinking and operating. And then I have people who are like, I can't wait to be in a company that has that type of culture, that has that type of extreme accountability. Like, I can't stand when people don't get their stuff done on my team. I want to go work for a team that holds their team accountable. And so we get people who apply because they really they align with our messaging, and almost like they don't align with the other messaging. And I think that's really important. So big rant. I'll bring it back over to you, Diego. But I just wanted to say, put your people on the Instagram and social media. Build that. You had a word for it. What is it when you're building that connection with someone through social?
Parasocial relationship.
Parasocial relationship. That is phenomenal. I think that's one of my biggest takeaways on Trade Stock ever, man. That is so cool. Thank you for sharing that.
It sounds kind of creepy, but it's a scientific term, and it's one that actually dates back before social media, because we were forming these relationships at. This is something that started with the dawn of mass media, with radio in particular. So you started listening to these voices, and forming relationships with them. Then TV came along and you started forming these relationships with these people. So the newscast folks, every night you build trust with them, you build a relationship. And then you have people like Bourdain who took you around the world, who taught you so much about life that perhaps you wouldn't have been able to experience yourself. And now with social media, us normal folks have the opportunity to connect at that same level with a wider audience than the people that we can see physically. And not only that, but we can connect two ways with people. It's a two-way conversation. So we can tell a story and then we can get feedback and we can build these really meaningful relationships that will benefit our business eventually, because the business is all about relationships. And at the end of the day, the sale is not really just about the money. It's about building enough trust so you can engage in a relationship with these folks. And landscapers know, like, when you get into a project, you're like in the customer's home. That's the most intimate space that they have in the world. And you're there every single day. Your guys are there every single day for, depending on the project, it could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, but it's a very intense relationship. And it's one that we ought not to take for granted. And it's one that, if you want a smooth process, can start a year before the construction.
Yes, I completely agree with that, because the trust aspect cannot be overlooked in this industry. No matter how tight your contract is, or how many specifications that you put in it as a client, there is always this factor in the back of your head that I'm going to get screwed over by this contractor. It might not be today.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might not be this year. It might be in 5 years when the wall falls over and I find out they didn't do the footing as they said they were going to do it. And as a homeowner who, doesn't have a background in construction, I would never know until the failure happens. And I think that aspect, the trust aspect, is so impactful. And as a landscape company, as a trades business, you are in the location you're in. Like, unless you're going to pick up and move to a different geographic area, and think about that: employees, assets, vehicles, your shop, your family, your kids at their school, you're pretty locked in. Don't mess that up, because that's your thing.
Though that's a wildest thing.
Yeah.
So many contractors do that. Like, that is the norm. I mean, it's becoming not the norm.
Sad to say, you're right.
But where do these people go?
Well,
I live in a small town, and if you screw someone here in this small town, you have to go to the next small town and then to the next one. And it's just exhausting. But you're totally right. Trust is everything. And landscaping as an industry is maturing, and you're starting to see the cream rise to the top. And going back to that airline thing, what was it that made me feel something? I think it was the consistency. And consistency is what builds trust, and consistency in everything, and how in our thoughts, in our actions, and in our words. There's this fantastic book by a marketing thinker called Ron Tite, and his book is Think, Do, Say. And his framework is actually quite simple. A lot of companies get really excited about telling a story and marketing, but they haven't done the thinking. They haven't really done the soul searching to understand what it is that they stand for. And even worse, they haven't followed through with their actions. So in order to build a great brand, you need to think first. You need to do, to make sure that your thoughts, your beliefs align with your actions. And then you have a story that's worth telling, and most importantly, it's a story that's worth hearing as an outsider.
Yeah, it's a story worth hearing. I really like that part. So I want to spend a little more time on this idea of trust, because I think it's just so important in today's world. And here's a $1 million question: how do you go about building trust within your market and within your client base? I mean, that Is there a recipe for that? Is there a playbook for that? Or is that something that happens through doing all the right things right?
Well, it's actually both. It happens by doing all the right things, but all the right things can be neatly packaged into a framework and a playbook. So again, consistency in everything that you believe and everything that you believe, because that the beliefs come from someplace deeper in your thoughts, in your actions, and in your words. And again, it's the same process and the same building blocks that we lead our clients through: getting clarity around your purpose, getting a clear vision established, also clarity around the values. Like, we need to stop with quality, like, what are the most common ones? It's oh my goodness. Like, everybody just says, like, oh, we integrity, quality, and service are our values. It's like, okay, if
What
you
does that
don't
even mean?
well, first of all, yeah, what does that mean? And if you don't, like, every company should have integrity. Every company should strive for a certain level of quality and service. Those are very baseline. But to me, it's very important to ensure that your values are very, very specific and very clearly defined so they can actually be lived out. So again, we start with our purpose, the company purpose. What does the world look like? What do our actions need to look like? And that's your values, because your values are the filter that all your thoughts and will run through, and the output of that will be how you conduct yourself, and also how you dress up, and that would be your brand identity, making sure that if you are a luxury company, you do look like a luxury company. Think about what the world would look like if Burberry or Rolex were branded the same way as Old Navy. Like, their
Right.
credibility and the trust that we have on those brands for being luxurious and good quality would erode overnight. So make sure that you yourself are dressing up in a way that represents those beliefs, those thoughts, those actions, and conduct conduct your or ensure that your process is one that is extremely consistent as well, from the first touch point all the way to beyond the end of the relationship with either a team member or your customers. I remember Jeffrey Scott, he's got this book called Destination Company. And within it, he
Yeah.
talks about this idea of red carpet exit, I believe he calls it. And that, to me, that's just so beautiful, that you create this employee experience, and you can do the same thing for your customers. You create an amazing client experience, employee experience, so amazing that even when they decide to leave, you're going to celebrate their accomplishments. You're going to make them feel so loved that, deep inside, they're going to be like, you know what, maybe a tad bit of regret if it's not the right decision,
Yeah.
but they will leave feeling like they spent their time there was well spent and that they were cared for. And I think that's just beautiful. And you can do the same thing with your customers, just making sure that every single touch point makes them feel good up until the last one.
Yeah. Diego, so many, you're dropping so many bombs today. I love it. I picked up on something as you were talking, which is the alignment, the
Hmm.
alignment of what you say, the process. So you say the experience is going to be through marketing, through your storytelling, and then what it actually is as a customer. Because as you mentioned, comparing maybe Old Navy and Louis Vuitton, if you walk into an Old Navy, you're gonna kind of expect, maybe someone to be greeting you, but it's not going to be a super personal experience. And you got a sale rack that you're going to grab some stuff off quickly. You walk into a Louis Vuitton and you're going to have someone dressed in a nice suit approach you and guide you through the shopping experience the entire time as your guide. And if you walked into a Louis Vuitton, but you got an Old Navy experience, the inauthenticity of that and the lack of alignment from what they say their brand is and then what their brand actually is going to make you probably not want to come back. And I think
It
that's what,
erodes the
yeah,
trust.
it erodes trust. Yeah, exactly. So I really like that point that you brought up, because it's okay to not say that you're everyone to everything, everything to everyone, and you're amazing and you have the best client experience and we get back to you within an hour. Just like, guys listening, when you're putting stuff on your website or you're saying stuff on social and you don't back it up, it's way worse than if you had never said that before. And I often see, and you probably see this too, Diego, you probably catch people on it, is like when we're creating our customer experience, we're creating our marketing collateral, people want to put down like we're the best company in the United States. We're the best company at quality in California. I was like, guys, is that like, there's no way that's true. There's someone that's better than us. Like there's always going to be someone that's bigger, that's better. And we've just got to realize, like, let's just be truthful with who we are. What can we promise? Well, we can promise to be a fanatic about response time. We can promise to be accountable to the things we say. We can promise to offer all electric equipment because we really do. But I see some customers or some contractors out there. I would caution you guys. They have 5 maintenance crews. They roll one of them out all electric, and they start telling their clients that they're an all electric company. And then that client sees their team maintaining a property with a bunch of gas blowers, and they go, wait a minute, I just talked to Justin. He said they're all electric. What the heck's going on? So whatever you do out there, guys, whatever you decide to take this conversation that Diego and I are having and put it into action, just be authentic as possible, because if you aren't, everybody will know and they will find out very quickly.
Yeah, and it will backfire. And we've seen this at a large scale with brands that jump into like a social cause bandwagon, and their past actions perhaps do not reflect alignment with whatever cause they're trying to ride. A good example was Gillette with the Me Too movement. They were very quick to
Yeah.
jump and be like, oh well, us too. And very quickly the world pointed out that actually you've been part of the problem for the past 50 years by promoting toxic masculinity in all your advertising. So we want to make sure that there's complete alignment between our thoughts, our actions, and our words, because if there isn't, the world will definitely call us out for that. And that is brand. I mean, it's your reputation. And you can influence that reputation through storytelling. You can influence that through your brand identity and through, aka dressing the part, and obviously through your actions. But ultimately, if there isn't any alignment, that brand that's forged in people's hearts, that reputation will unfortunately be a negative one.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's I think the biggest challenge that you face here when you go on your marketing journey is ensuring that you're working on both sides of the business. It's great to build an amazing marketing team and a brand story and build all this collateral, but I think when you do that, and this is what I love about marketing, is it forces you to work on the other side of your business. It forces you to be a better steward of your customers' time, to create a better customer experience, because ultimately you want to brag about how great your customer experience is. But if it kind of sucks, it makes marketing, inauthentic, or you just can't say it. So I love marketing because when you get good at marketing, it forces you to get good at the other stuff. And then it makes you want to get better and better at the other stuff. So you can then go and tell that story about this amazing customer journey and this amazing project you just finished, with a review attached to it of how great it was. And for us at K&D, I think that's what drives everything, is that customer journey and those 5-star reviews. And so if you're listening to this and you're still listening and you have nothing to do with marketing, like, I appreciate you for still listening to this, because it is so much bigger than just the marketing team or just that person that does marketing on your company. This is a whole company effort around marketing. And I think some people try to advocate that, and they kind of pass that off like marketing's not my job. But I don't know what your thoughts here, Diego. I think marketing's the responsibility of every single person on the company because it really takes a team.
It really is. I used to live in Niagara, and right across the street from our house, I worked from home, and my window was facing the outside, like our street, and their neighbors were getting some renos done, and they had people working there for a few weeks. And my goodness, the things that would come out of those people's mouths. And trust me, I swear, like
Yeah.
I'm not against swearing at all, but these people were trying to present themselves as professionals, yet all their staff members were speaking like pirates. And I called the owner and I said, "Hey, dude, like I have no problem with swearing. Like this is by no means like a complaint, but I'm just warning you. This is how your team conducts itself in um, in the wild, and it's going to actually affect your brand.
Yeah.
Everyone within your team is part of the brand experience, and it's important that they all live out your values.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Can
And
give
yeah,
me
you
one
want to take a
second?
quick, yeah, we can take a pause and then we'll
Yeah,
come
I
back
need
and
to
we'll
give
wrap
me
it up.
some
No worries.
chocolate or
We
something.
we can cut this part out. All
Okay,
right, cool.
I'm gonna regret this later. Give them that little
Yeah, yeah,
candy.
you're like buying time now. All right, cool.
No, they're good now. I gave them some chocolate. I have 5 kids,
Wow.
and they're all with me till tomorrow. So
You're a saint, man. Wow, that's amazing. Oh, good job. All right. We'll pick it back up. Wherever you want to dive into that, if you want to re-answer the question or I could re-ask it, whatever you want to do.
yeah, for sure. So everybody's part of the marketing team, everyone in the company. And I told the story just now of, well, if you want to keep that story is great, but everybody's part of the marketing team. And again, going back to those building blocks of a great brand, the values, that's why it's so important to make sure that your values are in fact very specific and very clear, because you want to hire and fire people based on those values. The way that I help companies structure those values tends to be, well, first of all, we narrow them down to three.
Mm-hmm.
Why three and not four or five or six? Because our brain tends to chunk information in threes. Three is a magic number. Uh, a good illustration for why that is almost like holding bowling balls. Like if I give you one, you can hold it. If I give you two, you can hold them as well. And if I give you three, you can definitely hold 3 bowling balls with your arms. But if I give you four, it's impossible. And our brains work
Interesting.
the same way. So the moment that you give someone 4 pieces of information, they're going to start forgetting all of them. That's a reason why very often in marketing and in commercials, in sales letters, we see 3 benefits. We see 3 points. It's because of that magic number. So values, we want to narrow down to 3 that are very specific, they're very clear, and I structure them as follows. So we have the name of the value. Let's just say that I'm going to go with a very basic one. We put people first. Okay. What does that mean? So I use a couple of sentences to define what that means to us. And your workers are thinking, well, what does that mean for me on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah.
And that's where I will or we will statements come in. And I will statements are a series of statements that are very, very specific that start with I will. In some cases, we will say we will. And these are actions that are tied to that value. So if we say that we put people first, and that means that we're going to consider people in all of our decisions, we will. I'm trying to think of an example. I will consider someone's feelings before acting. And we get very, very specific up until decisions that are done in the field. So
Yeah.
we want to make sure that we hire people that align with those values, that are excited with the living out the purpose of this company, and you also fire based on that. So if you have somebody in your team that's toxic because they themselves are not upholding that value, they're not thinking about others before they act, then that person has to go, unfortunately. And that doesn't mean that they're bad people. That just means that they don't align with what this company stands for. So it's very important as leaders that when we're building a company, we build it with intention, and we make sure that everything aligns, and all of that is branding. And once your guys get out there, or girls get out there, their actions are marketing. They're the megaphone that is telling that story through actions. And if those don't align with those beliefs at the very beginning of the building blocks, then you're going to have a problem, and that trust is going to be eroded.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so well said. And I think a lot of people forget how important it is to align your team's actions in the field with what your values are. And
Totally.
you know, people are watching, everyone's watching. And those
Yeah,
actions result in a story that people tell themselves about your company.
exactly. And I think it's so beautiful how the landscaping industry is evolving, particularly around two concepts that um, they're perhaps top of mind nowadays. One of them being toxic masculinity in the trades.
Mm-hmm.
That was something that was sort of the norm. But in landscaping, what I noticed as I was reflecting on the people that I have worked with over the last 10 years, all the leaders that I have worked with are very empathetic people. Like the ones that are building the best companies are not the macho men who are like, they're gym rats and they just want to like build, and push. They're the ones that actually they might be strong, yes, but they're very, very empathetic, and they're putting people first, and they're thinking about others before they think about themselves. And they're building businesses that are multi-million dollars, and they're doing so with purpose, and they're building something really beautiful. So to me, that's amazing. The fact that in the landscaping world, we are starting to see those types of companies becoming the leaders and the louder voices, and they're creating room for people who feel like, oh, I care, I want to build something like that. And then more companies like that are coming along, and they're weeding out those who are just pushing dirt
Yeah.
and whistling at or catcalling women as like that's sort of the end of it. And I had a one client who worked so hard on getting alignment internally with their values, with their mission, vision over time. And with that came, they were an established company. With that came obviously saying goodbye to some team members who were not a good fit. And then the evolution of the industry, seeing more women in crews. And he said one of his proudest moments was he hired a female crew leader or a crew member. And after a whole, well, and they would do regular check-ins, but the fact that she always felt safe riding with all guys, and that she
Yeah.
never felt harassed, and that she felt like she was one of them and she felt like an equal. That was one of his proudest moments, because he built a company in which now everyone is aligned on their values, everyone feels safe to be themselves, and everyone is living that out without having the boss, watching them all the time. And he said, man, that was just such a proud moment for me, because that's a world that I want to live in, a world in which everybody feels safe, to, to do their work, whatever that work is, and they feel aligned with their purpose. And to me, that's absolutely beautiful. And I've worked with other industries. I still work with other industries, but I feel that the landscaping industry in particular is leading the way when it comes to leading with love and empathy in a world that has long forgotten about that.
I completely agree. I think it's an exciting time, and it's an exciting time because people are actually looking up and wanting to change. And it's a very like grassroots movement, meaning I think this change is starting with the smallest companies, the teams who have 1, 2, 3 employees. I mean, we got to meet at Leanscaper, that event, and Mark Bradley is creating this movement that I'm in such belief of. And so many of the companies in the Leanscaper community are the guys who are just getting started or just grassroots. And I think that's the most beautiful thing about this movement is it's And I think most movements start like this in industries. It's not the big conglomerates that have been around for decades. It's really the new people coming into the industry who are, disrupting things and changing things up. So I appreciate that. Yeah, I think we've covered so many great things today. This has been such an awesome talk, and so many bombs dropped in a great way. I'd love to ask you to wrap it up with a trade secret, something that you've learned over your course of being in this world, in this industry of marketing and branding, and something you'd like to share with the audience.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll talk about a larger purpose here. And oftentimes we get frustrated when we look around our world and we see a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. We see systems that are not working, and we feel powerless. And we often blame higher forces like the governments. And um, we always say, like, they. We blame
Yeah.
they for everything, right? But I want to encourage everyone, whether you're just starting out or you're an established company, that I wholeheartedly believe that change can happen at a large scale, starting with small companies and small businesses, because change really begins in our hearts. And as business leaders, we have a fantastic opportunity to have influence over a small or medium-sized group of people. And that positive change of heart is contagious. Like when we decide that toxic masculinity is not going to fly in our company, that we're going to lead with love and empathy, that is contagious. And if you have a company of 50 or 100, now you've spread that love to those people, and they will spread it to their families, and hopefully they will spread it to even more and more people. So change in the world is possible. We live in a capitalist society, which I believe is absolutely beautiful because it's rooted in freedom. We get to choose where we spend our dollars. We get to choose where we work, and we get to choose what we do with our lives. And I think that small businesses have the opportunity to be change makers in a world that feels so hopeless, and in a world that, there's so many large players influencing. But statistically, our economy is driven by small businesses. We just don't talk about it enough. And if those small businesses all were to change and spread that change, and as I said, focus on empathy and love, we have a pretty decent chance at changing the world. So I want to encourage
Yeah.
business owners to see their business not just as an agent of economic movement, but to see it as an agent of societal change, because you have the opportunity to impact the lives of your employees, of your customers, your communities. And now, as we're banding together in the landscaping industry through organizations like Leanscaper and communities like Leanscaper, we actually have the power to change the world. And that's absolutely beautiful. And I want to encourage all of you to see yourselves as change makers.
I love it. I love it. I said that on stage probably 5 different times over the last couple months in front of landscape crews because I truly believe it. We have the potential to change the world, the capacity, the ability, and I'm super excited for that. That's so well said, Diego. Thank you for sharing that. And for everyone
Oh,
listening,
yeah.
that it is, man. Here's your opportunity. You have the power to change the world. And I don't think has there been a time ever before where this amount of technology, this amount of desire, and I say desire from a contractor perspective and a company perspective, but a desire from our clients' perspective and our employees' perspective to work for companies that truly have a mission of changing the world, not just making money off the way it's created, but truly actually changing the way people operate, people talk, people live, and we have that chance to do that. So Diego, my gosh, what a great convo. 153 marketing, guys. If you want to check Diego out and what he does, Diego, what's a good way to get a hold of you, and how can people follow you on your journey through social media or otherwise?
Yeah, for sure. So LinkedIn would probably be the best place right now. My LinkedIn handle is Diego153. And just, yeah, you can shoot me a DM there. My email is diego@153studio.com. And that's spelled out 153studio.com. And honestly, I'm an open book. So if anyone has any questions, any comments, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to send you an invoice for sharing my thoughts, but I believe in collaboration. So I'm always happy to answer any emails or any DMs that come my way.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening to another episode of Trades Talk. Hope you enjoyed this, got some value. If you did, and there's someone you're thinking about the last hours you're listening to this, share the podcast with them. Let's spread the love, spread the value. And thanks for tuning in. As always, Diego, have a great rest of your day. We'll see you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Trades Talk, where the next generation of disruptors comes to raise the bar. If you got value from today's episode, share it with someone in the trades who's ready to level up. For more tools, insights, and community, follow host Justin White and join the movement at jwhitegroup.com.